Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Backlot 605's Backlot Box Office. Joining me as always, I know I got it right. I'm excited for
Yeah,
this. As always, is resident historian and coming soon guru Derrick Veurink. How are you doing this evening?
doing great. How's your holiday weekend been?
Very movie busy actually. I did a pretty good job of trying to knock out a lot of the movies that came out this holiday weekend. There was a couple that were surprisingly quiet. I had some young lady try to bring a 1-year-old to House of Gucci.
Ooh,
Yes, she made it about 45 minutes,
yikes.
and yeah. So other than that, it went pretty good. So yeah, I how was it for you getting things through this weekend?
Yeah, I took in a lot of stuff as well. I've still got a couple of the newish releases to get through, but considering juggling movies and family because it's Thanksgiving, so I gotta
hmm
attend to family matters. But I still think I did pretty well, all told. And honestly, that's what next weekend will be for, is to catch up on everything I missed. So
Yeah, it's all those like, well, can it wait a week? Yeah, probably.
yeah.
Uh, so yeah, going into that here, we will jump into the box office for this week here. Starting at number one, we have the great and infamous Encanto coming in at $40.3 million over its 5-day weekend for its first week here. This is actually one of the first ones I got to go see. Um, Partly, I think this is because I saw this on Thanksgiving Day, but I did see this earlier in the day, so maybe a lot of families were, out doing the family thing and whatnot. I was the only one in the theater, and even for an early, like, matinee showing, I was actually kind of impressed that I was the only one in there. And frankly, I thought it was really good, so I'm not surprised to see this at number 1.
Yeah, like we mentioned last week, Disney loves to release an animated movie on Thanksgiving weekend. A bunch of the Pixar movies have come out on this weekend in years past. They've put all sorts of animated movies on this weekend, like Tangled and Frozen. So this is the weekend where they like to play it, and it works very well because you mentioned Thanksgiving Day, which is very quiet, but Black Friday tends to be a very huge movie going day for families because all the kids
Mhm.
are off of school, and they're like, well, we got to do something. And that's where movies like this really shine over the course of the Thanksgiving weekend.
So, what you're saying is I played it smart, and I went
Yeah.
earlier than the rest of the family, so I got myself a nice. It was nice. It was nice and quiet. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I myself thoroughly. I actually enjoyed it. It definitely gave me Coco vibes, just due to the representation and especially the color palette.
Oh, yes.
Definitely. I don't know if I feel it's Coco level, but I'd say again, I think it's a very good entry into the Disney animated movies.
Yeah. From an emotional level, yeah, you're probably right. But it is still a very energetic movie,
Mhm.
as a Disney animated musical. It lives
Mhm.
up to that stature with all the Lin Manuel Miranda songs. It's very colorful, very energetic, has a lot of visual fun with the whole magical house concept and just having all
Mhm.
sorts of fun with that, as well as, all the characters who have their gifts. How many times they say gift in that movie, I don't want to know.
I
Um,
right.
make a drinking game out of that. Sorry, Disney. But yeah, it's certainly entertaining. I think it's certainly going to do well over the next several weeks. It doesn't really have any family movie competition until Sing 2, which comes out right before Christmas. You see here it got an A cinema score, which indicates very positive word of mouth.
Mhm.
So that should be fine. The only potential caveat, and again, I'm not sure how many families actually know this, but Disney has had announced several months ago that they do plan on putting this out on Disney Plus for free on Christmas Eve as a Christmas gift of sorts to their subscribers. But I would doubt that many families know that that's going to be the case for this movie.
Mhm.
And I'm sure a lot of families that are going to go out to this are just looking for some
Something to
entertainment to bring the kids out to, period.
Yep.
So,
Right. Yep. That definitely sounds like a better thing to take a small child to than House of Gucci, but that's a whole different thing.
Yes.
All right. So coming in at number one is Encanto. As we go into number two, we have Ghostbusters Afterlife with its week two of 35.25 million, giving us total of 87.76. You didn't give us what the drop was. Is there much of a drop
well,
that was coming
well,
into this here?
well, the reason I didn't do it is because we're doing 5-day numbers versus a
Sure.
3-day. I believe if I remember my stats correctly, if you take the 3-day portion of that weekend, it's actually like a 44% drop, which
Okay.
is not bad all told. And it
No.
kind of shows that, certainly families came out in force for this movie during the Christmas weekend. I know it's still
Thanksgiving?
got a lot of the IMAX screens, premium, large format screens. You know, it's still very much an event movie, and
Sure.
families are and audiences in general are still going to come out gradually for that. So, the fact that it is actually only 5 million or so behind Encanto is actually pretty darn impressive
Mhm. I
when you
I
think
would
about
agree.
it.
I would definitely agree, and I do see this one, especially for the nostalgia base, the age demographic of somebody that would be going to go see Ghostbusters is gonna vary to the new kids that are getting into Ghostbusters, to people like you and myself, and even our parents who grew up with Ghostbusters.
Yep.
I do kind of see this as kind of having a little bit of a, not to make a pun on Afterlife, but is to have a little bit of a little bit of life itself, um, like No Time to Die did. Um,
Y- Yeah, and I know I've had people who have messaged me saying like, I'm thinking about taking my kids to this movie. Is it going to work for them? To which I said, absolutely. I mean, I would
mhm.
consider this probably the most family friendly of any Ghostbusters movie to date.
I
Um,
I would agree with that.
and again, to your point, I mean, it is the quintessential four quadrant movie because it's going to appeal across all age barriers. Because again, this is a sequel of sorts to movies that are 30, nearly 40 years old. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of nostalgia baked into that. And I think we're still going to see a lot of great legs in the next couple of weeks here before we get into the real holiday stuff. Certainly by this time next week, we'll see it cross the $100 million barrier, which is going to be very good. I think there's a very good shot that this will top the 2016 Ghostbusters, which finished at about 125, I think.
I can see
So
that.
for a movie like this that has again, and then again, this is one of those movies that's been anticipated for quite some time. Because again, it was supposed to come out like July of last year. So
Mhm.
certainly the anticipation has been building for nearly 2 years now. So I think it's really paying off quite well.
Definitely. Yeah. I do certainly see as a little bit of that we've been looking forward to this for a year and a half now. And I think that's definitely helping towards it, as opposed to, and we had that continual drip of promotion of this movie for the last year and a
Yep.
half, as opposed to just the, oh, by the way, we dropped off our marketing and then it picked up, a week, 2 weeks before the movie came out. We had those slow drips, and I think that definitely helped over the course of the last year and a half.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is I think from a word of mouth perspective, I think that's going to help out quite a bit, especially as people kind of hint toward others, hey, you won't believe what happens, in the final 10, 15 minutes of this movie and so forth. I
Mhm.
think that, and again, the advertisement has been very careful not to reveal that too much.
Yep.
But certainly, people will hint at it and say like, hey, so and so happens, so and so shows up. You definitely don't want to miss that. So I think that's got that going for it too, which
Yeah,
is nice.
yeah. And for those that have not seen it, and I will be respectful. We're only 2 weeks in, and be like, "Nope,
Yep.
yeah, it's gonna stay spoiler free until,"
Yep.
and I don't know, until I feel like I wanna spoil it. Alright, going into number 3, speaking of the House of Gucci in its first week at $21.83 million. Um, I partially Number 1, this is definitely in comparison to, like, say, Ghostbusters, this is definitely not, like you said, not your 4 quadrant kind of film and whatnot. Only certain people are gonna go see this kind of movie and whatnot. But some of those that are more movie centric, like you and myself kind of thing, I would almost feel it would. almost feel a little deterred to go seeing this after Ridley Scott's been going off the rails lately for what he's been saying about The Last Duel and some of his other remarks against towards Marvel and whatnot, that I don't think has helped this movie because you and I both agree that this is a good movie.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean it's a solid movie. It's got a
mhm.
lot of appealing elements and performances to it. It is a little bit long, and I
Yes.
think to that extent, for a movie that's well over 2.5 hours to post a number like this, or just a movie that's very squarely aimed at adult audiences and older
Mhm.
audiences at that front,
Mhm.
for a movie like that to do this well on a weekend like this is very, very impressive.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm pretty happy with this. Uh, again, a B plus cinema score, very solid for a movie like this. I think it'll have some legs here in the next couple weeks because again, it's aiming toward an older audience.
Mhm.
They're the ones that are going to show up fairly slowly for a movie like this, especially in comparison to something like The Last Duel, which barely made over $10 million. Period. And a movie
Right.
like House of Gucci beats it already in like day 2 or day 3 of its release.
Mhm.
But also, I think the advertising I think has been very effective to it. You know, Lady Gaga having all her iconic moments in the trailer, Jared Leto doing whatever the heck he's doing, or Adam Driver leaning ever so slightly into an Italian accent. I think it was a movie that was just very marketed very well, or at least
Yeah.
played up the elements that it knew it was going to appeal to audiences, and definitely they showed up as a result.
Yeah, I would agree. And the one thing I will certainly give this movie is it does prove, at least in my watching of it, is that Lady Gaga can shoulder a large scale movie like this.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I mean,
I,
I think we talked a little bit about with the Star is Born. That was very much a role that was kind of built around her as a
mhm.
musician, kind of like an ease into it. This certainly requires her to play more like a fully formed character, and not just a character but an actual real person,
Yep.
who instigated the events of this movie. And certainly she, I mean, granted this kind of goes all the way back to like when she cameoed in, say, Machete Kills, if people remember that.
I do.
But certainly she's certainly got the gumption to make it as a big movie star. I mean, this certainly proves that A Star is Born was not a fluke by
Yep.
any means. That certainly she is a name that can open a movie. So
Mhm. I
very
agree.
much not unlike Madonna in the 80s and 90s when she was revving up in movies like Dick Tracy or Evita or what have you. So
Right. I will say for myself, just as my quick opinion of this here, I agree with you. It seemed like it was a little bit too long, and the biggest qualm I came out of this actually was the up to the point of I'm watching this going, okay, when do we get into the part where we know it's going to happen, when we know that when Gucci's going to get shot kind of thing, and then literally like to the murder to the end of it, it's literally like 5 minutes of this movie, you know.
yeah, I mean it's always a risk when you have one of those movies that opens, very deep into the plot and then go like, okay, now we're going to rewind to where this all starts.
Yeah.
And even to that point, there certainly is a little bit of sluggishness, like the first hour or so before we really get into like just the general internal family backstabbing, which I think is where this movie really revs up.
Mhm.
But still, I mean, the movie overall works. It's perfectly fine. And again, a movie like this turning out to be a pretty sizable hit for adult audiences, that's a big deal right now. So
Definitely. Awesome. All right. So we are going to go into our number 4 of the Eternals, or okay, Eternals, at 11.4 million for its 5 day and its week 4. Looks like we finally crossed that 150 million mark. So I mean, that's definitely good to see. I mean, I'm definitely glad that this movie still has legs, but I think part of it is that we have a little bit of everything going on right now. So there's a little bit for everybody at the movie theater right now.
yeah, I mean, this is holding up pretty well. In terms of the 3-day weekend portion of this tally, that's a 29% drop, which is actually pretty good in my opinion.
Mhm.
It is closing in on the 180-ish million total that Black Widow did. It's still a long ways away from Shang-Chi. But the fact that it is holding up very well is a solid indication, especially since, as we're, very quickly going to be fully into the hype train for Spider-Man No Way Home, and people are going to be talking about that and awaiting it to come out. Certainly, Eternals might take a hit from that.
Mhm.
There could be that chance of, like, hey, maybe the excitement for No Way Home actually helps Eternals have some good holds here the next couple of weeks.
Right.
It's too early to say if that's the case, but I wouldn't be surprised. So
It would be kind of fun to see Spider-Man and Eternals in the top 5, but that's good. That would be a little bit of a rough hopeful there, I think.
yeah, it's probably gonna. Yeah, it'll definitely fall out by the time Spider-Man: No Way Home comes out. It might hold up in the top 5 until like the weekend before Spider-Man comes out, but
Mhm.
you know, we'll see what happens. That's all I can say.
All right. So going into number 5, we have Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. 8.8 million in its first week. Um I know that you and I both have seen this one here. This one I knew that
I,
this one you got
I,
crossed off,
I,
didn't you?
I have not actually seen this one yet.
Oh,
This is the
okay.
one new release out of the 3 that I have not made it out to. So you actually have the upper hand on this one.
I do, and I will certainly say, as somebody who has played these games, if there's one thing that about the Resident Evil franchise, as much as over the top as the Mia Jovovich movies are, you know, they kind of have a little bit of tie to the original games and whatnot, and then they just go off the rails. This one here has a lot of throwbacks. My problem that as I'm watching this movie, it's a solid like hour 45, hour and 47. They don't try to make it overly long with it. The problem I have with this movie, and I can clearly see why it's number 5. And to be honest, even to the point where I don't know where number 6 landed, that it's possible that it wouldn't have even cracked the top 5, is that we're talking about a movie that's only a little over 100 minutes long, and yet they're trying to mesh storylines from both the first and the second games, and it's making things too convoluted. I think that if they would have just stuck to one singular aspect of this, if we're trying to get back to the roots of the game that these are based off of, I think they would have probably held out a lot better. But I also think we're kind of, as much as I want to say I'm never going to be in the Marvel MCU fatigue, I'm also seeing as that, we just got off the Mia Jovovich Resident Evil train.
Mhm.
They should have let it sit for a little bit here before they're like, let's go make another one.
Yeah, I mean, it actually it is. The more that I thought about, the more I'm actually kind of surprised because we're actually coming up on nearly 5 full years since the last Mia Jovovich Resident Evil movie.
Has it
It
been that
seems newer than
long?
that because obviously Mia and Paul W.S. Anderson have made movies since then, like last year's Monster Hunter,
I
um,
suppose.
where you might feel confused with that. I mean, I don't blame them for wanting to kind of restart this as an ongoing franchise simply because with the Mia Jovovich series, it was kind of like a durable programmer type of
Mm-hmm.
series, where they could knock one out every 2 or 3 years and make a tidy profit. And I think certainly them taking the approach of, okay, we're going to start from the very first games, we're going to make a plot out of those, we're going to try and do like a full fledged reboot, as long as they can still make it semi low budget wise, at least capture some audiences. I can see them doing that. I mean, maybe it wasn't a great idea to put this out like on a busy holiday weekend. I think you might want to have wanted to go for like a less busy weekend where it kind of could have been like the big movie of the weekend instead of getting lost in the
Mm-hmm.
shuffle, like it is here.
Yeah.
To your point, number 6 on this list was Clifford the Big Red Dog, which was at 6.9 million.
So I
So
wasn't too far off.
no, no. You know, I'll be curious how this holds up in the weeks to come, if only because movies like these tend to be very front loaded in terms of the fans coming out right away to movies like these.
Hmm.
So we'll see next weekend if it does actually manage to stay in the top five or if Clifford knocks it out.
Right.
Um, this did get a C minus cinema score, which is a little concerning in terms of, because if you had that fan heavy turnout and if they
Hmm.
were kind of mixed on those as well, that probably doesn't bode well for its prospects.
Yeah.
Because most of the other Resident Evil movies were in the B to B minus range back in the day. So this certainly has taken a little bit of a hit franchise wise.
Yeah, I would certainly say is I think a lot of that honestly is, where the originals were basically almost just using the name more than anything, using
Sure.
using the name, using the zombie aspect of it, but really it it left the station, no pun intended, years ago. Um, and this one here, I agree. I stand by it. Is the fact that there are literally scenes from those games that are recreated. Bleh, um, almost like frame for frame. There's a lot of the things that are beautifully recreated for this that definitely give you the expectation of what you would get out of the games. Um, I just I think part of it. I think you're right, though. I think they picked a really weird weekend to drop this here. I think something like Resident Evil maybe would have been better off in around the holiday season and whatnot. But even the holiday season was kind of, where do you drop that really with what we had coming out in October too. So um, honestly, I this because we don't exactly have the triple A stars to sell this movie either. I'm surprised they even gave this a theatrical run, to be honest.
I mean, again, Resident Evil, it's a brand name that kind of sells itself at the box office at this point. I think maybe this could have been like a perfect like January type release where all the
Mhm.
big stuff has kind of come and gone and you can have, some genre programmers like this cuz that used to be the territory for like not only previous Resident Evil movies but also like underworld movies and other genre stuff like that. So that might have been a reasonable approach for it, but as it stands, it's a little bit more mixed the where they actually put it out. So, oh
Yeah,
well.
yeah. I would agree with that. At least I like the fact that Robbie Amell's got some sort of, vehicle to try to steer through. So, I'll take that. All right. So, to recap here, our top five for this week's box office, we have number one, Encanto at $40.3 million coming from Disney. Number two is Ghostbusters Afterlife at $35.25 million. Number three is House of Gucci, $21.83 million. Number four is Eternals at 11.4. And number five, rounding out the numbers, is Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City at $8.8 million. So yeah, what do we look forward to seeing what we got going on next week here that might shake things up a little? Do we have anything going on, or is it kind of everything being loaded out and kind of waiting out for Spider-Man in a couple weeks?
Yeah, I mean, there are no official new releases on my calendar for next week, at least in terms of like wide releases that'll actually impact this list. There's a couple of Fathom events that I know are going on next weekend, but
Hmm.
I'm not even sure that any of those will actually be tracked from a box office perspective to the extent that we would actually see those
Oh,
on
sure.
this list. We'll probably see some big drops from last weekend because again, Black Friday is such a very front loaded day at the box office, with people having work off or school off. So we'll see some big drops, probably especially on the family film front. So Encanto and Ghostbusters will both probably take a bit of a tumble. Um, but yeah, it's going to be a very quiet week otherwise. We're not going to see any real action until 2 weeks from now when Spielberg's West Side Story opens on the 10th. And then, of course, Spider Man No Way Home on the 17th, kicking off the
Hmm.
big Christmas movie season. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting the last couple weeks between the yeah, as I say, we've got West Side Story, we got Spider-Man, we got The Matrix, we have The Kingsman finally coming out.
Yes, yes.
Uh,
Tickets are on sale now for the Kingsman. It is actually
ooh,
something that exists.
ooh.
We also have Sing 2 coming out, which will be the big family play for that holiday season. American Underdog, the Kurt Warner story, will be out there as well. Denzel Washington's latest film as director, A Journal for Jordan, starring Michael B. Jordan, for the tearjerker audiences. There's going to be a lot of stuff coming out this Christmas, and it's going to be very exciting to see how all that stuff stacks up and if people really make a huge return to the box office, because that Christmas season, a lot of people show up to the movies, and hopefully that happens this year. So
Hmm. How many of these do you think are being dumped in December just so they can try to get some Oscar buzz?
um some of them, like the Denzel, that's for sure. I also know Licorice Pizza, the Paul Thomas Anderson movie, that's going to go nationwide on Christmas Day, so that's also going to be a big awards play. Obviously, Spielberg's West Side Story, that was supposed to come out last Christmas, but got saved all the way up to this Christmas because Spielberg is definitely going to want to see if he can get a Best Director nomination because, hey, I did a musical. Nominate me, please. So,
I'm
yeah,
Spielberg.
yes, I've won several Best Director Oscars, so let me have another play at it.
Let me just put another one on the shelf. All right. So that has been this week's box office backlot box office. I need to change
Yes.
that up.
Let's call it the BLBO.
The BLBL. I like it. All right. So be sure to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterbox HQ. You can follow us all at Backlot 605. Join the conversation with us here, especially on the South Dakota Film Community Group, where it's filmmakers, film enthusiasts, film lovers, just everybody that enjoys and loves talking about movies. Derrick loves to spark conversation with all those wonderful, making us feel old entries into the ether of how old is this movie. Be sure to also check us out on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, and Amazon, and as well, of course, our beautiful faces on the YouTube. You can certainly check us out, subscribe, comment, leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you here. Excuse me. And lastly, don't forget to check us out on Patreon, where you can help support the channel, help support the podcast, and just support us in general because we'd like to be able to provide you as much content as we possibly can. Derrick, what else do we got going on?
Yeah, on the Patreon, again, you'll hear conversations on many of the movies that we just talked about. There will be a Ghostbusters Afterlife episode coming out here very soon, as well as a discussion on Eternals that's already up. So look forward to that. Um, Check us out wherever you're watching this, same time tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central, where we'll do our weekly box office bonus episode this week on the movies of Will Smith in honor of his recent release of King Richard. Also, this Thursday at 7 p.m. is going to be the latest Backlot 605 live show, which will be the countdown of the top 20 Christmas movies of all time. That is 7 p.m. at Average Joe's Hobby and Gaming Store in T, South Dakota. So check us out there.
Yep, Casey's already throwing the smack down. I saw earlier today. He's gonna bring his Turbo Man and everything.
Yep. If I will not be surprised if Jingle All the Way makes it to the top 5. I'm just not going to be surprised about that, but we'll see.
This is why I'm not part of a Christmas countdown. But for the sake of Corey and him and local Lou doing their due diligence of trying to get some stuff watched and whatnot,
Yep.
I now officially want to see In Bruges being played. I need In Bruges. All right. So that again has been the Backlot box office, and be sure to check us out here tomorrow. And when we provide you the little bonus content that we have on that, we will see you next week.
See ya.